we are. The church in Ocean Park is diverse. You'll hear diverse viewpoints. No matter what is said here, your voice is just as important as whoever it was that just spoke. There is a time of community sharing when you'll be able to share your own thoughts briefly or ask a question. But just remember that no matter what is spoken, that it doesn't stand for the church in Ocean Park unless it comes from the administrative board. So you're welcome. Your voice is welcome. We are glad to learn from you. And you're welcome at the church in Ocean Park. And I'm looking forward this morning to Bob Gordh speaking with us. And we'll be able to see it later, both on Zoom. Oh, and Daria is our tech. Thank Nate and Froggy up there. And the amount of books I was going to carry and all the books to show you what we've read, but that I couldn't get it into the building. But Bob is the kind of person that if you tell him something, it was found in a book and he appreciates what you said, he'll read that whole book. And probably like 3 or 4 books from the same author just to find out what's going on. So I'm grateful that he's a part of our community, and I'm really grateful that he's speaking today on a value-based theology, because we talk about all different kinds of theologies, Christian, Jewish, Buddhist, Muslim, and he's going to talk to you about the value-based theology. Welcome.
Well, good morning. Since we are, as we all know, we're a multi-faith congregation, and this morning I'm going to be talking about my own religious perspective. It doesn't really have a name, but it's Janet always warns us that we may hear something we disagree with. My perspective is one that it is different from, it's different and in at least partial disagreement with some of the perspectives. The other perspectives that we hear from here, my only question really in my mind is whether anyone will agree. I know some will disagree. Whether anyone will agree remains to be seen. I've entitled my talk "A Values-Centered Approach to Theology." This is not an approach that I invented myself. The main thinker that influenced me in going in this direction was a 20th century philosophical theologian named Henry Nelson Wyman. But I'm not going to be quoting him and so forth. I'll just be presenting what I have come to believe in my own words, but I do want to credit him with teaching me a great deal. So I call this a values-centered, or it could be called a values-based approach to theology. And part of what that means is that in speaking to you, I will not start by talking about my beliefs or disbeliefs with respect to God. I will get to that, but I will start by talking about my value system. Okay, part one. I am going to follow my notes pretty closely to keep from talking any longer than I have to. I mean, I could go on at some length. Okay, part one. The broad outlines of my value system can be stated in three principles. Okay, principle one, we are obligated as human beings to contribute to the well-being of other people, of others, which can include more than people actually, other sentient beings, and to our own well-being, and to try to strike a fair balance between those two. Principle two is that we are obligated to try our best to reduce ill-being, or I'll just call it pain and suffering, of others and also of ourselves, and to strike the best balance we can between those two directions. And principle three is that all human beings, that we should recognize all human beings as having equal worth, as being equally deserving of well-being, even though we can't affect everyone, but everyone deserves a good life equally. That's my three principles. Now, there's room for plenty of honest disagreement about what constitutes well-being, how different aspects of well-being should be ranked or prioritized, and the same thing with different aspects of pain and suffering, which are the worst, the ones that we should try to alleviate the most. But there's also plenty of room for honest disagreement about the best means of bringing about these results. And of course, each person has different ways of contributing to well-being and trying to diminish pain and suffering. So that as we go through life, I think each of us develops a very complex value system, which is individual and unique to us. So I don't assume that all of us agree about all value questions, but that would be impossible. But I suspect that we all might agree on the three principles that I enunciated. At least I find that those to be the principles at work in this church. In any case, I will take those as sort of axiomatic or as a given as I go on. Part two. There are four parts. Part two. If I try to live in accordance with my values, I'm an ethical, I would say I'm an ethical person, or a moral person, or at least I try to be ethical or moral. If I'm, I know religion can mean a lot of different things and has many different functions in life and so forth, but in the best sense, I would say that if I'm a religious or a spiritual person, I not only try to live in a way to promote good and diminish pain and suffering, but I also realize that I need a lot of help. For myself, and I do consider myself in some way a religious or spiritual person. For myself, I need inspiration, encouragement, guidance, companionship, forgiveness, and a lot of other things. And secondly, if I'm a religious or spiritual person, I make a point of seeking those resources. I don't just sit around waiting for, an inspiration to come, but I make a point of accessing that which will help me in my attempt to contribute to the world. And you don't have to go to a church to do that. But it seems to me that churches at their best, at least, are pretty good places to go, at least to spend some of one's time, because everyone there has come for that purpose. Everyone here, I think, is here because we are trying to be better people, and we get plenty of resources for that here. I know that I do from the Church in Ocean Park. Now let me ease into my beliefs about beliefs and disbeliefs with respect to theology. I definitely believe in higher powers. In fact, I've just been naming some of them. A community is a higher power. Friendship is a higher power. Beautiful music elevates us. Inspiring stories are a higher power. In other words, there are many powers going on, and those are just ones that I find very much here that are helping to elevate us. But they operate not only within churches, but also in the world. Love is one of the greatest of higher powers. And has many different forms, which hopefully include, because of the equality thing, that love should be extended to everyone. There are powers within us, the best aspects of our own personalities, such as courage and kindness and perseverance. Those are higher powers. And so are powers in nature, without which there would be no beings who are capable of experiencing well-being without higher powers within nature. Political movements of the best kind are higher powers, and traditions of the best kind are higher powers. And when I say higher, I mean two things. That they elevate, that all these powers contribute to well-being of sentient beings. They bring us to a higher plane of richness of life. And secondly, they are higher in the sense that they are much bigger than any of us. I don't invent all the things that inspire me or the traditions that I become part of. They're much bigger than that. And notice, though, that so far I've only been talking about higher powers that exist in this world. So the question arises, for me, do I believe in higher powers or some sort of higher consciousness that exists beyond this world, that transcends this world? For instance, we might ask the question, is there some sort of benevolent, conscious being that I can communicate with and that can communicate with me to bring out the best in me? honestly, I'm uncertain in this area. I don't discount that possibility. And I do think sometimes I feel called to do something good. Calling might presuppose a caller. So, but then again, maybe that's just metaphorical. I find this to be a sort of a mysterious area. I don't discount, though, the possible existence of spiritual beings or a spiritual being, sort of that transcends the world. There is a belief, a common theological belief, though, that I do not accept. And it's what I was taught when I first was going to church as a child. God was defined as the creator of everything, and also as all-powerful, all-knowing, omnipresent, and as totally good. And I felt very obligated to believe that. It wasn't just, here's an idea, but this, you must believe this. Somewhere along the way, I shed that obligation. I no longer feel I must believe in that conception. And without that obligation, my own experience of the world and my own reasoning actually not only do not lead me to believe in such a being, but also lead me to very strongly disbelieve. And the reason is not very original. We've all heard this, but I do accept this argument that if God were all powerful and all knowing, God would not have created a world in which there is so much pain and suffering. Or maybe, in fact, why would such a being create a universe in which there's any pain and suffering? So it doesn't seem logical to me to hold that belief. But to get back to my values-centered approach to theology, when I think of my values, I don't feel that holding that belief would necessarily even help me live by my values. In other words, for instance, it seems that a supremely moral and good being should be a perfect role model. But if I tried to imitate an all-powerful being, I would have to try to bring about a great deal of good, but also a great deal of pain and suffering, because that's what happens in the world we live in. That doesn't seem like a role model to carry out the values that I believe in. So to me, it's not a loss to me to give up that belief in the all-powerful creator. Now, if someone insists that that's the only way to define God, then that person would have to consider me an atheist, because I don't hold that belief. But I don't think of myself as an atheist. I don't think of myself as someone without any religion. There are other ways of thinking about God, in fact, there are many other ways of thinking about God, which we're aware of being the multi-faith congregation that we are. I tend to think of God in a way that's following Henry Nelson Wyman's conception. I tend to think of God not so much as a being, but as becoming. I tend to think of God as the becoming of goodness, the coming to be of well-being. Or to put it differently, I think of God as being the whole process by which the various higher powers, partly acting through us, bring about well-being and diminish pain and suffering. And in this sense, I feel closest to God, defined in that way, when I am accessing those higher powers, and when I am participating as fully as I'm able in that creative process of making the world better. God conceived in this way is not all powerful, but is all good. This seems realistic to me. I don't think that there are not enough higher powers in the universe or outside the universe, as far as I can tell, to bring about the total absence of pain and suffering and to make everything good. At least it hasn't happened so far. And I don't think it will. But that doesn't leave me feeling that life is meaningless or hopeless. Because even if the higher powers are not all powerful, they are very powerful. And if I try to align myself with them and work toward the best we can do with what we have, that makes for a very purposive and meaningful life. Thanks for listening.
We knew it would be, concise, easy, with 3 points. We knew all. 4 points. I'm sorry, 4 points. That 3 is with the preacher. Yeah, you did 4. And the thing is, theological conversations can be very in depth, like and so we could go on for quite some time. It's going to be a challenge to have this kind of a sharing time without it being very long. And so what I'm suggesting is let's see what happens. but also this doesn't have to be the last word. You know what I mean? Okay, so Craig's first.
You mentioned the presence of the super deity within this, and part of, I think, the byproduct of belief is what we call pain and suffering. If we are to imagine a value system, which holds and esteem that super deity, how is and what place does value have in the embracement of that super deity as opposed to the suffering that is caused by, the cracked thing? If indeed we are to reimagine some of the higher powers that you mentioned, because many of the higher powers that you mentioned did not include or did not cause pain and suffering. So I'm trying to imagine the sense of where we can have a value system within that faith that can address those higher powers and not focus on so much of the suffering, if indeed you can comment to that.
I don't know. I'm afraid I don't understand the question.
what I think you laid out is a situation in which the higher powers are in concert with a super deity God, quote unquote. Are we clear so far?
You're clear, but not accurate. That's not what you, I don't think what you're saying is in fact what I laid out.
Well, let me ask it this way. If we are looking at the pain and suffering, which is endemic and caused, in fact, by a belief in a super being, then what place would you say values have in alleviating the suffering and pushing or promoting those higher powers that you spoke of?
I don't think pain and suffering are caused by belief in a higher being. That wasn't part of what I was putting out there.
In order to clarify a little bit more, I think we could have like another session about this because it is very in-depth. So I see 3 hands up right now. 4, 5. Okay, I'm gonna go to Daria first since she's on the line. Are there people online talking or you?
Yeah,
Okay, then put them on, they can talk. Yes.
Does Daria want to talk? I was gonna say.
But you're gonna talk first.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. They can talk.
The camera's this way, so I'll respond this way. Thank you for your talk, Bob. I think one aspect of theological study that could help explain some of the questions is the subsect of theodicy, which deals with the question of evil and why suffering happens when some believe in an all-powerful God who's all good and almighty. And I think that subsect is a very important part of theological discourse. So I invite you to look into that. It might be of interest to you.
Oh, I have looked into it a great deal. Don't believe me. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go to 2 people here and then we'll go online as well. Let's go to.
Let's see where I can make that contact. Could you repeat sort of your first value? I want to make sure I heard it correctly, and then I think I have something I want to say. But first, I want to.
Okay. It's simply the idea that we are all obligated to try to promote well-being in the world, both on behalf for other people and for ourselves.
And that there should be a fair balance between those.
Yes.
Is what I think you said.
Yes.
Okay. Because I got stuck right there. Partly because fair is one of those words that requires definition. But partly, and I think more fundamentally, is that it implies that if you are advocating a fair balance between care for oneself and care for others, it implies a contradiction. It implies the fact that my well-being is not bound up with that of everyone else. Right?
Yes,
And I just want to say that I think one of my most fundamental values is that I am because we are. That I cannot, my well-being is contingent on the well-being of everyone else. And that I cannot live in peace in the world while there is massive suffering, right? I think that, I could be wrong, but I think that the set of values that you're putting forward is based on an individualist paradigm in which the person as an individual has a one-on-one relationship rather than seeing that the web of human experience.
Could I reply?
Please do.
Yeah,
You're going way too far in terms of track of. I don't accept that characterization of what I'm saying. I mean, I agree with you that to a large extent, you know, my happiness is bound up with your happiness and so forth. But I totally agree with that. But even after that is said, there is sometimes some conflict between what I need to do for myself and what I need to do for someone else. All the communism in the world is not going to erase the fact that there are conflicts of interest. And that's to recognize that is not to, you know, be an individualist in a negative sense.
we need that longer conversation, I can tell, for Maureen.
I'm not gonna pick up that thread, because there's so many threads, Bob, and what you spoke about, and thank you so much for your words. In Buddhist thought and practice, suffering is inevitable because there's impermanence. That's just a basic given. And the response to that is compassion for everyone and everything, and that becomes the value, you know, that you move forward given that reality. And I just want to just say one more phrase, share another understanding of values. Thomas Berry, the eco-theologian, wrote a book called Dream of the Earth. And as I understand it, Dream of the Earth has embedded in it this ethic that anything that we do needs to be for the good of the whole. The whole includes the planet and all its beings. And so anything that doesn't reflect that is against the value he's putting forward.
We have Louise and Joseph, and then we'll go online. Oh, and then Jeannie.
Thank you so much for your talk, Bob.
You're welcome.
Can I join your church? I really like everything you said.
Thank you.
It makes sense to me. And as I sit here, I am not someone who believes in a higher being, you know, or what people call God. And my belief is that everything we think, see, and feel comes through our own senses and beliefs. And that is why so many people can have different concepts of God, because everything I see is what I see filtered through my senses and my beliefs. And also when I say that, it seems like, I think because we are so enmeshed, or not that, that's not right. We're born and we need someone to connect with us. I think that's where our desire for a higher power that loves us and knows us comes from. And, you know, as you speak, I feel like I do want a higher being that cares about me and loves me and takes care of me. And I don't really believe there is such a thing, but I believe that because I was raised with the idea that somebody's going to love me and take care of me. So that's the way I feel about God. It's a concept that I can choose to believe
I have to stand up a little bit because yesterday evening I was doing a little work and I sprained my lower back, and it's very painful. And talking about pain and suffering and so on. There's so much to say. So much. I just can't begin. One thing though, I don't think pain and suffering and evil are not negatives. They are not negative. We relate to them as negatives. We think of them as negatives. But I think the wonderful thing about the Old Testament, or parts of the Old Testament, is that some of the writers did not see death and suffering as evil at all. They did not see it as a negative thing at all. They thank God for suffering. They thank Him for good. God is good, and God is, God. Everything is related to God, and God giveth and God taketh away. When we lose, it is not a negative. And in working in hospital, I've come to realize after 33 years of ministry and burying people and visiting people in hospital and coming here and working in chaplaincy for many years, every day of my 60 years so far, I'm more than 60, but 60 years of working. Suffering is not a negative thing at all.
No.
It is not negative. It takes too long to explain. But this is not a negative thing. And you're saying that happiness and community and love and joy are powers. But I don't think those are powers. Those are manifestations of a benevolent power. But those are not powers in themselves. And that is why we abuse them. Communities abuse, happiness is abused. We speak about the pursuit of happiness, but you can't pursue happiness because it's not an entity or power in itself. They are manifestations of power. But I think I'll stop here.
Hard to stop, I know, it's very hard.
Well, I love this too, Bob. Very thoughtful, and I love how organized you were, because that's the way I think also. So I think that what you talked about with respect to your concept of God not being all powerful or all knowing is something that's really bothered me. It's not, it is something I believe. It's the same as my belief, but I think a lot of people do cause themselves pain and suffering because they believe one of two things that I'm just going to mention. And again, there are an infinite number of things. One of them is that somehow God designed things for me to experience so that I will learn things. I have several friends who believe this, and then when their experiences cause them pain and suffering, they say, well, why would God do this to me? Why? Why are you doing this to me? And I think really, there's a saying, God doesn't roll the dice. And I think actually the universe does roll the dice. I think that that's how things happen. And that our experiences and our actions, like climate change, all the things that we do cause things to happen. So our actions are causative, and I don't think that God causes things to happen. I think that, I don't use the word God, I use force, kind of like in Star Wars, that there's some kind of malevolent intelligence that has created DNA and honeybees and, hexagonal little things that bees make, so they store honey in and all that kind of stuff. So I think that causes people to have difficulty. And the second thing that is hard for me is to watch people pray to God, for example, to save someone who is dying.
Okay.
And when the person doesn't die, they say, God, listen to me. But the problem with that is that if the person dies, like a baby, for example, that means either God is not listening or doesn't care. So that also causes pain and suffering. And I don't know what the answer is, but I just wanted to mention those two things.
Different nuances there are. We're gonna go online and then we're gonna go to chat. So put it up really high, Daria. Who
Okay,
wants to talk online?
Rachel?
Rachel Rose Lucky is gonna talk.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, it's working. As someone who believes that we're all on a journey towards higher consciousness, and through life after life, through reincarnation, we are moving closer and closer to godhood. I believe that there is value in pain and suffering. Now, I'm not saying that we should not try to ease people's pain and suffering and to be compassionate, but that pain and suffering of others and ourselves gives us an opportunity to be compassionate. So as to the question of why would an all-knowing, all-powerful, all-loving God allow pain and suffering to exist in the world? To me, it's a way of bringing ourselves closer and closer to the ultimate goal of achieving godhood. And that's through the process, the journey towards higher consciousness. Bob, do you have any thoughts on any of that?
Thoughts on any of that?
Want to respond?
No, I'll just let that stand.
Thank you, Rachel. Are there anybody else online, Daria?
I thought Abby was gonna speak, but now I don't know.
Okay. Abby, would you like to speak? If you do, wave your hand to Daria.
Yeah, I
Oh,
thought
yeah.
it was raised, but I guess it wasn't.
Okay,
The idea of pain and suffering, that it's always negative. I mean, because I had, partial sight as a kid, adults around me always thought that meant I was suffering. And they would try to tell me that God didn't really mean it, and that this is really something that's good, and you could do something about. And I would always think to myself, yeah, maybe if we had accessible formats in school and you didn't write everything on the board, and I had large print books. But no, I mean, I never, in the first place, it wasn't until I was about 6 or 7 that I realized that everybody else didn't see the world the way I did. I mean, everybody thought it was blurred and they only had central vision. And when we got to flashcards, I figured out that that wasn't the case. So.
Thank you. Is somebody else, Daria? Or they're done? Okay, Chuck.
Thank you, Bob. I've known Bob for 35, I don't know how many years, and Dr. Gordh, Dr. Bob, in philosophy. And Bob has attitude, he's enriched my life in so many ways, with the wisdom that I've experienced with him. For me to disbelieve in a higher power or force that affects my life daily is impossible. And there's a certain arrogance I lay on people who claim that there's nothing else there, there's just this, It seems to me that we claim to have, that person claim to have all power within himself or herself, which is foolish in my opinion. There is something out there, I don't know what the hell it is, but I do like the idea of goodness unfolding as it happens. We see examples of kindness and generosity, compassion that there's no reason for other than just somebody's motivated to do good. Then there's a problem of defining goodness. Goodness for one person may not be the same as for another, but we have a general notion as to what it is. And so it has to be, for me, the whole thing is it has to be a very general, my lack of understanding or ability to understand is very real. So it has to be a very general notion that I'm not alone. And if I ever find anything out more, I'll let you know.
Hey guys, just wanted to say, my stance on suffering is that I do think it's bad. And that doesn't mean you can't learn from suffering, but it is something that we ought to try and lessen in the world. And that I do think it's a negative thing. Also, even though we can learn from suffering, with regards to the idea that an all-knowing, all-powerful, all-good God might allow suffering, because it has potentially has some sort of net positive in some other, in our reaction to it or what it creates in us. I think there are just too many examples in the world of very clear, needless suffering that does not amount and could not amount to any good. You can imagine an animal getting stuck under a tree somewhere where nobody sees it, no other animals interact with it, that suffers horrendous pain that could not possibly result in any positive outcome. And so to me, that sort of the problem of evil is a sufficiently good justification not to believe in a God like that.
So some of you, yes.
Just want to say thank you, Bob. I got a lot out of what you spoke to. And
Thank you.
I really thought it touched me. I think that I would say that my understanding of God is we'll never understand him, but if we're lucky, we can experience him. And that's what I'm hoping for. I appreciate everyone's comments. I just thought that in some ways, I appreciate your concise arguments, your concise statements, and I got a lot out of that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. One of the things, go ahead.
I'd just like to make one comment about the pain and suffering issue, because a lot of people have spoken to it, and there's a lot to explore. I'm with Will, my son. If I don't think of pain and suffering as a negative, I don't have any moral guidance. What is it that I try to alleviate? But I think in this world we live in, there are certain kinds of joy that we maybe only can get to by going through some suffering or pain. But I don't think that gets the all-powerful God off the hook. Because if God is all-powerful, he can make things so that we didn't have to go through suffering to get to the good. Either, when people say, you can't have joy without pain, that may be true in this world we live in, but then you're giving up the idea of God having the power to make the world that way or not. I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, I'm gonna close this off here. I would just want to say that this discussion, John might have found this too in the first year of seminary. People come with strict ideas, some people come with strict ideas about what God is from their Sunday school classes. And if any part of this kind of discussion would happen, it would cause them a lot of grief. There are people in my seminary who had to leave. People that actually had nervous breakdowns or things like that, because what they believed all along was being challenged. What I want to say to you guys is this refreshing, first of all, but it also, if you have like a little part in your stomach that's like, that's kind of normal too at the end of this kind of a conversation, because you didn't get to say all of the things that really you believe. Nobody in here did, not even Bob. So I know that there's more to whatever you're saying or feeling than has been expressed. And we all have deep beliefs, and none of them are incorrect. And so one of the things that this does is it just highlights that the need for civil discussion about this and how we can grow from one another. Like, I think one of the things I love about the Church of Ocean Park is that people can say things like this. There's not a lot of other faith communities where this kind of discussion would happen. And somebody would say, the things that were said today. And some of them probably disturbed you. Different people would be disturbed by different parts of this, I would assume, because it was all over the place. But we could have more theological discussions in small groups. One of the things we used to do, I think I'd like to do it again, is off and on we would have spiritual journey small groups, and we would just share where we are in our spiritual journey, and like with 6 or 8 people, and it would be a different 6 or 8 people each time. And so I think I'd like to start that again, because this is showing that it would really be helpful, I think, for us to be able to, in a small group, have some time to share. And then of course you have a potluck or we have food, because that's always helpful. So anyway, if you have these butterflies in your stomach and you're thinking, why is Bob the one that gets to talk? And I didn't get to say what I want to say, and things like that. It's one of the reasons is because we have had some other folks talk about their own theologies, a lot. Different people have, and this is another example of a theology, and it's an opening, I think, for us to further explore our own theologies and the questions we have and the things that we hold dear. A lot of us hold our belief system very dear to our heart. They're who we are. And so if somebody is saying that's not true, he's not saying it's not true to you, for you. He's just saying for him, this is how it is. So I'm talking for you, Bob. So at any rate, that's my opinion. And so we're going to have a moment of silence, and then Louise will break with us on it. Thank you so much, Bob. Basket. Fred? Somebody wanted the basket, but okay. All right, you understand? Welcome to our closing circle. Are there joys or concerns you'd like to share? Anybody online, Daria, wants to share a joy or concern?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Lifting up Carol O'Neill and Claudia. First of all, I want to lift up our tech team. You guys are and my dear friend Ivan Schneider, very emotional video call yesterday. He and family have a lot of strength and determination to go forward. Challenging them. Thank you.
Yeah.
I want to thank all the actors who stuck with us, only, strange, time with the SAG stuff, and now it's, back in action, all the movies and TV shows that were not being filmed or now being back.
Ready else?
I just wanted to continue lifting up what's happening in Gaza and in Israel, in all of the area, all the surrounding countries and everyone affected there, also globally as well.
Yeah, this is actually a birthday. Sarah Cruz, who many of you might remember, she worked with us as an intern on the Peace Camp and then also on Growth Central. And she had her birthday on Friday, so.
Happy birthdays. Today's my dad's birthday, so I'm gonna lift up my dad too.
Today is Gina's birthday.
What a joy to be married to this man. I am so proud of him. I want to ask y'all to lift me up. I've shared some about how important it's been to me to be able to teach English to these Mauritanian refugees. And the pastor of the church where they are now living has told me that my services are no longer required. And has asked me to come in for an interview to see if I might be acceptable for their program. And I'm disappointed and angry, and I need to be lifted up because being angry is not particularly helpful. Anyway, I just need a little.
I just wanted you all to know I'm not using this walker because I'm old. I'm using it because I broke my hip. And speaking of old, happy Thanksgiving, everyone, because my birthday is the day after. I'll be 39 again.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Well, I'm helping her to hold it because I crooked my back yesterday too. So both of us are the same.
I just want to lift up everyone who has the courage to speak the truth.
I forgot to lift up, our son Kevin is a visual effects editor, and his movie, he's not the main editor, but he is a visual effects editor. Monarch Legacy just came out on Peacock. So it's a Godzilla monster movie that's really cool. If you see it, realize that he's been sitting behind his computer doing the visual effects for a long time. Monarch Legacy.
Yeah, I've heard.
Rebecca Denaro is a part of this. Her mom said, appreciate the lift up. Mom's innocent.
John Landano, who is Colleen Landano's, again, Bonpain Landano's husband. So it's Teresa's son-in-law, is very ill.
I just want to say it's really happy to see a lot of faces that we haven't seen in a long time showing up today. And for choir and service. I want to hold up Manny Dias, who is fighting 2 types of cancer. And I want to hold up Steve Goldman, who's in rehab and trying to get back on his feet, at least with a walker. He's having a hard time with his lungs. And I'd like to hold up the memory of Mondo every time I see all our new equipment up there. It was his vision and his enthusiasm that pushed us to buy all these things and agree with the people that were putting the equipment together for us. He guided us and he was very enthused about where this church was gonna go with it all.
I want to let my job at Home Goods right now through till the 17th of December. They're partnering up with St. Jude Hospital. If you are shopping there, they're taking donations to help families who are, you know, who have kids who have cancer.
I want to thank Bob for a wonderful morning. Gained so much comfort in just being exposed to his wisdom. I love the word wisdom. I don't use it often, but well, you're wise. Not a wise guy, you're a wise person, for sure. I want to lift up those who are apparently, myself, allergic to the vaccine for COVID. I wear a mask because of that. I've had 2 incidents with the COVID and the booster shots where I had to call, had to go to the ER because I was, I thought I couldn't move. I was just completely wiped out. And something about this thing, this neuropathy that I experienced, it seems to have something to do with flu shots and all. It came on after my first flu shot. So that doesn't sound perfect. Be careful. I can't be sure, but it's something I'm not going to get a COVID shot.
Everybody's so different, so different. So we lift up those that are spoken and those that are still in our hearts as well. And we do have some birthdays.
Yes, we have Sarah, Gil. Next birthday, over here. Oh, Gina. And who else, please? Beth. Okay, so Sarah, Gil, Gina, Beth. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Sarah. Happy birthday, dear Gil. Happy birthday, dear Gina. Happy birthday, dear Beth. Happy birthday to you. Okay, we'll do a quick closing song. We'll just do a couple times, and there's hand movements, but you don't have to do them. I just do them so you know where we're going with this. So it goes like this. In beauty, pick it up a little more. In beauty it's begun. In beauty it's begun. It's beautiful to the left of me, it's beautiful to the right of me, it's beautiful below me, it's beautiful above me, it's beautiful before me, beautiful behind me, it's beautiful around me, it's beautiful inside of me. In beauty it's begun, in beauty it's begun. One more time. It's beautiful to the left of me, it's beautiful to the right of me, beautiful below me, it's beautiful above me, it's beautiful before me, beautiful behind me, it's beautiful around me, beautiful inside of me. In beauty it's begun, in beauty it's begun, in beauty it's begun, in beauty it's begun.